Welcome back to CryptosRUs. Today I'm going to reflect upon two things from this past week that definitely had effect on Bitcoin and crypto overall. And also today I'm driving a new 2025 Mazda CX-70. This SUV is so new it's not even being sold yet. And I'm going to give you guys a little review, little preview of this SUV. All right, so what happened with Bitcoin and crypto this week? Two major things stuck out, and one of them really had nothing to do with Bitcoin. Let's start out with the first thing, Nvidia's earnings. Okay, a lot of you guys know about Nvidia, know about how hot it has been in terms of performance over the last few years. We all also know that AI is a big thing, right? AI is only going to get bigger and better. Ever since the introduction of ChatGPT, every major firm out there is starting to embrace AI, starting to integrate it into their own products. And of course, the big tech giants like ChatGPT, like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Facebook, they all want a piece, right? So I don't think I have to go in depth in terms of how AI is now really transforming like literally everything that we do. I mean, I don't know if you guys noticed, even Google search results. If you're searching in Google, there's like, it uses Google's Gemini AI, and it kind of like finds an answer for you, but not in the way it used to. Like now it actually it reads all the articles for you and kind of gives you a summary of what you want to hear. It's like you had your own personal assistant searching for you rather than just give you a bunch of articles and videos, right? So I mean, even search results, even, you know, those of you guys are using Photoshop or Premiere, you know, there's AI built into it. I mean, there's just a lot of crazy things about AI. But how does this all relate to Nvidia? And how does it relate to crypto? Well, Nvidia is the one that's selling all the chips to these AI companies. So Nvidia, by far, is the biggest GPU manufacturer when it comes to AI-related chips, and they dominate. Their chips sell for billions upon billions. They sell every single one, and these big tech giants can't get enough of them. So their numbers have been spectacular. And you know, this last week they had an earnings report, and everyone was looking forward to it. It was Wednesday afternoon, and they reported fantastic numbers, growth of 122% year over year, and their profits and revenue both went up. But Wall Street thought it wasn't enough, and actually the stock went down afterwards and actually pulled tech back. So if you're thinking about, well, what does Nvidia have to do with crypto? Well, that's one of the reasons. A lot of people were looking forward to the earnings report. Nvidia's earnings is as important as like a CPI reading at this point for tech. It's the global powerhouse everyone's looking at, because if they do well, right, basically that shows, it gives a glimpse into the industry and how much they're willing to spend, and also gives you a glimpse into AI and the growth of AI, right? So unfortunately they came out, it wasn't as good as expected in terms of their earnings and their forecasts and everything else. So their stock went down and actually pulled tech with it. NASDAQ, you know, did not have a good week this week. And crypto also got pulled back, because right now we're also kind of seeing this coupling again with tech and Bitcoin and crypto. For a long time, Bitcoin and crypto deviated because of the ETFs. The ETFs did that, made Bitcoin move outside of just the broader market. But now it seems like we have come back to those levels where it does once again, the broader market and the tech sector does affect crypto. So when we see big up days, Bitcoin and crypto goes up. When we see down days, it goes down. So that's number one. And also keep in mind how Nvidia relates to crypto is, of course, AI. I mentioned about all these big tech companies that are all embracing AI, but we have a lot of crypto companies too that are also involved with AI, right? They're all very young, but they're all trying to come out with a decentralized version of ChatGPT or some kind of other assistant program, or some kind of decentralized model to better utilize GPUs, for example, data marketplaces, data modeling. I mean, there are a lot of things that are kind of in the realm of AI, and you know, they were kind of gaining strength ahead of Nvidia's earnings, and then they kind of like lost it. They all kind of lost it after earnings. So that's the second way crypto industry is affected by Nvidia. So unfortunately, Nvidia, you know, they didn't the Wall Street didn't like what Nvidia put out, but I think it's a mistake, and also I think it could be just their way of faking out the market. You know, I have no doubt Nvidia is going to come back stronger than ever and break through their previous highs, and it could be as early as this week. I think last week could just be a way for Wall Street to kind of like shake out the weak hands. Like we see that with Bitcoin and crypto all the time. So it could be their way of doing that. So yeah. So that's one of the things that happened this week. Another thing is liquidations. Okay. We had one of the worst long squeezes we've ever had. We had, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of longs get squeezed and wrecked because we fell down suddenly, right? And it's still a dangerous game out there, even though it seems like it's calmer now. But when you're playing with leverage, you gotta watch out. You know, we have these massive movements, especially with alts. So unfortunately, too many people went on a long side, and it does seem like someone just wanted to clear out the board. You know, I've always speculated, because we don't know. There are a lot of whales, of course. There are a lot of market makers out there. We also know there are a lot of exchanges out there. So it always fascinates me, like why we have these random dips, right? Or random pumps. It goes both ways. I mean, when it comes to manipulation, you can't just want it one way. We see the market get manipulated to the upside too, not just the downside. But you know, sometimes it's just out of nowhere. It makes no sense. And then Bitcoin, you know, like last week when we were like 62,000 and we fell down to like 58,000, 4,000 points out of nowhere. It made no sense whatsoever, right? And it always makes me wonder and curious, like, who's actually kicking these off? So when you can't identify, you got to think who benefits the most, right? That's always how you identify who's behind something. If you can't figure out, if it's not in plain sight, the answer, like who is actually selling off and causing this, think about who benefits the most. When it comes to liquidations, longs and shorts, who benefits the most? Either side. It's the exchanges that are offering the leverage. They win no matter what. They win, they collect the fees, right? So whether you get liquidated or you make a huge play and you make a lot of money, or you know, you simply don't make any money and it's just going sideways, right? I mean, they win in all those scenarios because all they're doing is collecting fees, right? So it really makes me wonder if it has to do with these exchanges, like, you know, and plus they get this, they know the books, they see the data, so they know exactly where to drop something if they wanted to. I've always thought about that. Can't prove it one way or another. I don't have enough tools or data with me to prove it otherwise. Sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. But man, it just makes me wonder who's behind all this, right? And sometimes we can identify. Sometimes we just cannot. But liquidations played a big part in Bitcoin and crypto this week because obviously we saw some manipulation, right? We saw some dips out of nowhere, and it should have been like that. Some of it had to do with Nvida, of course. Some of it is just like normal activity, but some of it like just came out of nowhere. So it makes me think that it does have something to do with the exchanges, or I don't know, just the market manipulators, whoever it is, right? Like, I'm just going in a circle here, don't mind me. So yeah, there's that. So I mean, really, my point is just be careful. I know a lot of you guys like to play with leverage. I still do too, because we're all degens. But if you're playing, make sure you don't go too greedy. The market is still very volatile right now. We're not in a full-blown bull market. The parabolic, the banana zone's not here. When it is, you could do your crazy leverage, and everyone looks like a genius. All the traders, they all look like geniuses, and they'll throw up all their big wins, because in a bull market, it's easy to make money. But when it's in a boring market like this, when we're going sideways, it's tough. It's tough. So just be careful. Don't be too greedy with your leverage plays. Or better yet, just don't play at all. But I know some of you guys get quite bored. I do too, and I still like it. But it adds so much pressure, and sometimes the pressure gets to you. So don't make mistakes. Yeah, those are two things from last week. Tomorrow in my Sunday walk video, I'll share with you what I think about the market for next week. But outside of those things, what am I driving today? This is a brand new 2025 CX-70. This is a new SUV for Mazda. Mazda is like the third wheel when it comes to Japanese manufacturers. Of course, you got Toyota, you got Honda. You have like the Nissan, and then you have like the Mazda, right? So it's actually like the fourth wheel. But Mazda does have its own following, because Mazda tries to be more sporty. Tries to be like the BMW of the Germans, okay? I mean, it's kind of like that. This is a brand new SUV for them, the CX-70. But, the CX-70 doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and let me explain. This 70 is supposed to be slotted between the 50 and the 90. The 90 is a 3-row passenger SUV. This is a 2-row. But the funny thing is, this is exactly the same SUV, but with the 3rd row seats taken out. Normally, manufacturers don't do this. They come out with a new SUV that's somewhere, like a 2-row mid-size SUV that's a little bit smaller. They don't just take the 3rd row out from a 3-row and then just call it a new SUV. Why don't you just enable a 3rd row delete option then, right? It makes like no sense for Mazda to do this. And here's what else that doesn't make sense. The price is exactly the same as the CX-90. So why would you just not get the CX-90, keep the 3rd row down if you don't need them, and then bring it up when you do? With the CX-70, you don't have that option because you just don't have 3rd row seats. So the whole concept of this SUV makes no sense whatsoever. If you're going to shop for a large SUV from Mazda, you go with the 90. This is not cheaper, and it's exactly the same. Exactly the same. In fact, it's so the same that the 3rd row cup holders are still left in the trunk space, and they're just sitting there with no use. Mazda didn't even want to replace the door panels or the side panels because they were too cheap about it. That's how the same this is. So when I research this, I'm like, what is Mazda doing? This is such a waste of money. They could have just added a check mark when you're ordering your CX-90, 3rd row delete. That's it. But they decide to come out with the new SUV. Okay, so I'm just going to start out with that. It just makes no sense whatsoever. But how about just this as an SUV? Is this a good family SUV? Is this a good SUV overall? Well, it really depends on your taste. You know how I said this is kind of like, Mazdas are like BMWs, or trying to be the BMWs of the Japanese. So they do some things that some a little minority of people like, but rest of the people don't. That's why they're always like the third or fourth wheel. For example, in the CX-70 and all Mazdas, they give it a really weighted steering feel. It's artificial for sure. I mean, in terms of precision, like I'm just testing it right now, there's very little play in the steering, but there's this like really heavy, dense weight to it that's not enjoyable at all. It doesn't make it feel like a sports car. It just makes it feel like a drag to turn the wheel. That's it. Especially when you're trying to park in low speed situations, like in a parking lot, especially a crowded parking lot, a small parking lot, you're going to hate the steering wheel. It's not like an auto adjust. A lot of the Germans, you know, they'll have like a weighted steering wheel, but it gets lighter when, you know, when you're not, when the speed is low or when you're in a parking lot or something like that. But not this. This is just like heaviness. It's like you attached 10-pound weight to your steering wheel. That's what it feels like, and it's not a good thing. And all Mazdas are like this. So I've never enjoyed Mazdas to begin with because it doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's something that you'll feel right off the bat. The steering wheel itself, like I said, very precise. The leather and the feel looks good. The button layout looks good, right? So yeah. I mean, I got a lot of complaints about the CX-70. So I'm just going to say it first, and then I'll say the good stuff. I don't want to mix and match because while it's still fresh in my mind. Something else I want to complain about with the CX-70 is there's two powertrains. You get a regular 3.3 inline six, which is like 280 horsepower, which is pretty good. And then you have the premium versions, the upper trims, get this hybrid setup. Well, I think they're all hybrids. I take that back. They're all hybrids, but it's just a matter of the horsepower output. So the lower one's like 280, and then the upper one's this is 340. So this one on paper is like 340 horsepower, 370 pound-feet of torque. This one is a plug-in hybrid, not just a hybrid, and it's made into an 8-speed transmission. So on paper, it looks great because Mazda's forever used their 6-speed transmission and this 2.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. They used that engine in every single car they had, and finally decided to go with something new, right? Modernize, a more modern transmission and a more modern powertrain. The problem with this is they both got worse. That's the problem. I don't know, like 340 horsepower and 370 pound-feet of torque on paper is a lot. You put your foot down, it's not a fast SUV at all. In fact, there's something weird with the pedal. Like, you push your pedal down, unless you push it all the way to the floor, you don't get that thrust. So like, if you push it down 3/4 of the way or halfway of the way, this Mazda feels slow, really slow. Like, it feels like it has 200 horsepower in such a big SUV. So if you wanted to pass, you really need to floor it all the way. Then you feel like the rest of the power catching on, which really makes no sense because this has a hybrid motor attached to the engine and a transmission, and it's supposed to give you that instant torque. So the way this pedal works and the way this feels, this doesn't feel right. It feels like, normal driving wise, it feels like a very underpowered SUV, and it shouldn't be like that at all. This should be a very fast and engaging SUV. The old CX-9, right, which I really loved, that had a 2.5-liter turbocharged i4, made it to 6-speed, had 250 horsepower and over 300 pound-feet of torque. It wasn't a fast SUV, but it felt more lively than this one. This one has way more power, and it feels like a slug. Again, I don't know what happened. I don't know, the engineers at Mazda, I don't know what they did. It feels like a slow SUV. It does. Now, does this mean the fuel economy goes up? Yeah. It's like, I saw it was like rated 28 miles per gallon combined for a large SUV. That's pretty good. But will you enjoy driving this? The answer is no. So, all right, got those complaints out of the way. Oh, I got another complaint for you guys. Mazdas hate touchscreens for some reason. This is the premium one. This is like the upper trim for the CX-70, and this large 12.3-inch screen, which looks gorgeous, is not touch. You still have to use this fumbling setup with the rotary dial and buttons, which, yeah, you could get used to pretty quick, but why not make that a freaking touchscreen? What car in 2024, no, this is 2025, what car in 2025 doesn't have a touchscreen? I don't get it. It's a beautiful screen, and you get another screen in the gauge cluster. It's nice, but no touch. I don't get it. I don't get it. There's just too many question marks with this CX-70. So many question marks. All right, now before you guys say, "Oh, I'm a hater of Mazdas," let me say some good things about the CX-70. It does look good. It's basically a CX-90, so I'm just going to compare a CX-90 to the old CX-9. I think it does look good. The front end looks, I mean, this is a bigger SUV overall, several inches wider and longer. So it does feel bigger on the inside. It does feel like a good sized SUV. So for families, plenty of room. I do like the fact that the second row door opens up 90 degrees, so it makes it really easy to get in and out. Well appointed. Red leather inside. I do like it with the black. You get all the features, right? Like cooled and heated seats and steering wheel, all that good stuff. You do get, yeah, and the interior does look good too. So you got to update outside. I think the presence is good. It's a large presence. It still looks very much like Mazda. There are certain angles to this that I think looks weird. I think the back end where the tailgate slopes down looks a little weird to me. The door panels look a little weird because they like bow inwards. It's hard to capture on camera, but you'll see it in real life, and it does look a little weird. But overall, it's still an elegant looking SUV that's quite spacious and well pointed on the inside. So you got those things. You got those things down. As for the drive, besides the really heavy steering and the throttle that acts weird, everything else does feel quite well. This one has 21-inch wheels, and the drive is still quite nice, soaking up all the bumps quite nicely. So the suspension is nice and soft, and it's also very quiet in here. I don't hear any road noise. I'm going low speed, but no road noise. No wind noise outside. It's a good elevated position. The visibility in here is all great. So, you know, the drive isn't bad. It isn't bad, besides being slow and sluggish, and the steering is way too heavy. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I gave a lot. I've already reviewed a lot here. In case you're wondering about the price, the lowest form of the CX-70 starts a little bit above $40,000, so it's like $41,000, and the high-end one, like this one, tops are around $57,000, $58,000. So I don't know. You guys have to decide if it's worth it to you. In my live chat, a lot of people always ask me, what's a good three-row family SUV, right? And I always say, like, the Telluride or the Palisade, if you're not talking about luxury. Can this compete with those two? In my opinion, if I was rating those, and those are considered like the top of this category, I would rate them a 10. I would rate this probably around a 6. So that's the gap difference between this and a Telluride and a Palisade. However, maybe some of you guys do enjoy all the negative things I've said about this car. I don't know. There's just so many weird things that Mazda did. I mean, it's no surprise that you don't see a lot of new Mazdas out on the road anymore. You really don't. Back in the day, you see a lot of CX-5s, right? You see some CX-9s. And you saw some Mazda 3s around and Miatas. These days, you just don't see any Mazdas around. I mean, the competition has just gotten so much better, and Mazda just seems like they're really struggling. But yeah, that's it. That's it. All right, guys, smash the like, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys tomorrow for my Sunday walk video. My live streams on Monday, 8:30 a.m. And if you want to see the full review of this car, even though I said a lot, there's a lot more to show you guys. There's more goodness. I don't want to just come off as a basher or a hater of this. So if you want to see a full review, head over to Drivers Only, my other channel. The full review will be coming out soon. And plus, there's a lot of other cars on there too you don't want to miss. So Drivers Only is in the description. All right, guys, have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.